Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. As you can see, I'm in a different location. I've had to move rooms because they've been doing this renovation downstairs that's been driving me crazy for over 2 weeks now, and I filmed this video already. All the files were corrupted, and then with all that renovation work, tried to set up in another room, then the noise would start, then I'd have to undo everything, and honestly at this point I'm not trying to keep a consistent mise-en-scène, if you will. I think the review, the content of what I'm about to say is more important than anything, so just get used to this setup. Hopefully this will be the only video that will be, here. But yeah, it is what it is. I'm gonna have to do this for as long as the renovations are being done. And I honestly just want to get this review out there because, I like having the review of the book put out before I start reading the next book, and I'm already almost done with book 5 at this point, and I don't want my thoughts to get jumbled up, and I don't want to make a mistake and actually talk about a point that's actually in book 5 that I think is in book 4 because I've already finished book 4 while I'm still reading book 5 and the video hasn't come out. So anyway, yeah, this is a new setup for today. Hopefully you're not too bothered by it. I'm just gonna get right into the review this time, seeing as, well, all of the things that I've just mentioned, all the annoyances, but also because this is the longest book so far in the series. It's 734 pages. The other books were, I think, at most 340 something. So yeah, there's a lot of good things and some nitpicky things to say about this one. So let me just get started. All right, first thing I really liked about this book, SPEW, the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Rights, or Elvish Rights. So this is Hermione's entrance into the world of activism. So she's trying to bring awareness to the fact that house elves are essentially slaves. They're sort of slaves because yes, they are bound by this magic that keeps them servile, but they also want to be servile. They seem to not have any problems with serving wizards. It's just kind of how things are. Hermione's take on that is that they are brainwashed. They haven't been educated to fight for themselves. Really, it's Dobby. He's the only house elf that we meet, in this book at least, that wants to, well, he is free and that he wants to promote that for other elves, and he's trying to convince all his friends at Hogwarts, now that he's working there for money. He wants to convince all his fellow co-workers, if you will, that it's not so bad to be free. They've convinced us that it's the worst thing that can happen, that we're supposed to be happy just serving other people, other wizards, but freedom brings us happiness too. So Hermione and Dobby are pretty much the two that really take this idea forward. And I love that I love Hermione. She's always the one thinking beyond the immediate. She's forward thinking. She sees the nuances in situations. She seems to be the one most vocal about discrimination within the wizarding world. Maybe because she faces it herself for being, well, mixed blood. She's her parents are muggles, so maybe it's a bit of her own personal experience with other people's judgments on her, especially Malfoy and his family and people who think like him. But aside from the personal that affects her, I think she's just genuinely someone who wants to help other people, has read all about other types of people and creatures, and she's just a learned and very smart person that's well aware of the prejudices against other people who are not like her. She also is able to point out, and I love this part, how the textbooks that Hogwarts students or wizards study and read about the history of their own world pretty much excludes house elf contributions. They're the footnotes if they're footnotes at all. So it points to this sort of revisionist history that not just the human world, succumbs to, but also the wizarding world too. There was a funny part where this is not verbatim, but she, mentions Hogwarts, a history, but she's like, well, actually, the real title should be Hogwarts, a very incorrect history that disregards everything the house elves have contributed and that they are slaves for wizards, but nobody wants to mention that. Definitely not verbatim, but, I like how feisty she is about, like, these issues. She doesn't really care that other people think that she's being weird about this and, like, she's fighting against norms. She doesn't care. She's doing it because she knows it's right, and yeah, screw the other people. It's her vision and she's very passionate about it. The book does not shy away from pointing out maybe some of the problematic aspects of her activism. Like I said, I've already gushed that it's great that she's trying to help people who are discriminated or house elves who are discriminated, but so far it seems like she's taking on a cause and speaking for a community that she hasn't actually interacted with very much, and she hasn't gotten their opinions, because I think if she actually did, then she'd realize that house elves kind of don't want that freedom for themselves. She does dismiss it a little bit by saying that they're all uneducated, they're all brainwashed. Not flat out incorrect. Everybody's conditioned to think a certain way, but it's also kind of presumptive to assume that all of them, are thinking this way, are just staying house elves because they don't know any better, and they actually, if they did know, then they would certainly change their minds and agree with Hermione. Maybe this is an area where she shouldn't be the forefront. She shouldn't be like the loudest voice. Maybe it should be a house elf, Dobby, for instance. But the book doesn't shy away from pointing that flaw out in her little SPEW mission in this book. Which I think is really smart. I like when even good people are a little bit nuanced, and they have a little bit of problematic views. Yeah, and I think this is one of those instances, and we can definitely find that in the real world too. People who have good intentions but maybe aren't carrying out those good intentions in the best way possible. It's always good to communicate with the group that you want to help. Otherwise, are you just doing it for yourself? It may come across as like having a savior complex. Yeah, lots of things like that. But yeah, I do really appreciate that the book points that out. It doesn't just like praise Hermione. It says like maybe she can do a little bit better. I have a lot of great things to say about Hermione in this book in general. I also really liked how she responded to all the Rita Skeeter slander in the magazines and in the media. She didn't really take it to heart. She brushed it off. She knew that feeding into it would just give Rita and other people what they wanted from her. She was extremely mature about the entire situation, unlike Harry, I guess, or unlike anybody else at 14 years old. I feel like, it's a pretty normal response for a young person to just give to their impulses and react right away without like thinking it through. But no, not Hermione. She's got a good head on her shoulders. So I liked that she was just able to not let any of the negative points in the media affect her too much. She knew like her worth and what was real and what wasn't, and her truth. This media obsession of delving into people's personal lives, especially young girls and women in general, speaks to how the media in real life treats women and girls. There is a bit of a double standard there. Hermione is pretty much, it's total slander against her, and there's more focus on breaking her down. And I think it's a sad truth that media in general just likes to tear down women and girls before they like even get a chance to say their part, give their take on something. Yeah, it's just more saucy and juicy, I guess, to gossip about women rather than men. And the double standard also comes in people's reaction to that news. You know, if Harry did, or if they said something about Harry, like, you could sort of forget about it. It wasn't blown out of proportion, but with Hermione, it's all about her physical looks and about her love life. Like, she's not the smartest person in the room all the time. Like, they just focus on the most superficial qualities that Hermione has, instead of ever seeing her as more than just like an outer shell. So yeah, sad, but I think an accurate representation of, yeah, newspapers, the media, and how it treats women and girls. One of the best scenes, and one of my favorites in this book, but I think so far in the whole series, is right after Rita Skeeter publishes her expose on Hagrid and his background, revealing to the world, without Hagrid's consent, that Hagrid is in fact half giant. It may not have been like the biggest secret since he is of such a big stature, but you know, it's not something that he necessarily shared with people, or maybe wasn't even ready to share that with other people. But anyway, so that piece was released to the world, and Hagrid locks himself in his cabin, his hut, and he's crying, and he's like missing from his classes. Nobody knows what's happening with him, and so Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Dumbledore go to his cabin just to see what's going on, because they love him and they want to see, you know, if something's wrong. And this really beautiful scene takes place where they all like reassure him that they love him no matter what, that they love him. He could be like pure blood, he could be half giant, he could be full giant. Like, they love Hagrid, they love his personality, they love who he is as an individual, and not what like stereotypes his background may bring. They judge him for who he is, and it's good to get a bit of a reminder as a reader, and for the characters too, that it's just the most important thing you could do is be yourself. And it's not just good for, you know, other people to see who you really are, but it's also for you, for your sake, to have a healthy mental, physical, emotional life, just if you could be fully yourself. Now, obviously not everybody has that luxury, but if you can, it's certainly you're going to be more of at peace than you would if you were constantly masking and constantly pretending to be somebody that you're not to make other people happy. Dumbledore reminds Hagrid that honestly, like, people are always going to have something negative to say, something really judgmental and mean to say, no matter who you are. He mentions that still at his age, at his reputation, he still gets a lot of mail. Like, there's not a week or a day that goes by where he doesn't receive mail from an angry parent or someone who disagrees with how he runs Hogwarts, or that just has something nasty to say to him. And this is coming from, you know, Dumbledore, one of the most respected wizards in the wizarding world, the most powerful wizard of all time. So yeah, it reassures Hagrid that it doesn't matter what anybody says. His strong group of friends and loved ones are there to be with him, to make him feel better, and they appreciate him for all that he is, and they don't try to judge him unfairly for that. And so the conversation that Rita Skeeter article about Hagrid brings up is, one, it points to a really nasty prejudice against giants. I guess they have a history of being very violent, so anybody who's part giant like Hagrid, people just assume that they are violent as well, and that they shouldn't be allowed in certain places because there's a potential threat that they will be violent or start killing people. And even Ron believes this. It's interesting because it seems like Hagrid for him is like the exception. So yeah, I don't know if the book is intentionally like pointing out how certain characters might be a little bit hypocritical in their openness to different people. But you know, that is something to be said, that like Ron and others really, while they say that, you know, they appreciate Hagrid or they appreciate this one person, it's almost like that one person is not like everybody else. And so they appreciate that one person, but like everybody else still falls in line with the stereotype in their mind. But anyway, the bigger point that I'm trying to make is that these conversations point out this prejudice, but also it doesn't just dismiss somebody like Madame Maxine, who, you know, physically, if you were to see her, she's clearly of giant background, but she denies it. And in fact, she's pretty offended when Hagrid brings that up in conversation with her. She tries to pass it off like she's just big boned. Again, kind of obviously not true. But instead of just like dismissing that as a joke and like getting mad at Madame Maxine, characters like Hermione do bring up maybe reasons why people may feel the need to lie about who they are in order to fit in order to avoid being discriminated against. You know, I previously said that not everybody has the luxury of being themselves. Sometimes you do just face a lot more discrimination for being a certain identity, looking a certain way, being a certain way. And for some people, it's just not, it's not worth it, I guess. It's too much pain and trauma to be yourself. There's too many dangers in being truly yourself, that sometimes pretending is like the safest way to live, which is, you know, very sad that we live in that kind of world. But yeah, for some people, it's just not possible. And so Hermione points out that like maybe for Madame Maxine, just the threat of living her whole life being judged is too hard for her. So she's pretended that she's not a giant. And, you know, I can't help think of real world concepts like passing and stuff, where people would, I mean, I guess it particularly is about the Black community, but I don't think it's only about the Black community. It's just this idea of pretending or passing as one race when really you're either part another race or fully another race. And you make this choice because it's just easier for you. There are less setbacks for you. You have more job opportunities. You get, you know, people actually give you a chance in the workplace. People give you a chance in housing, a bunch of stuff. We all know this. So yeah, it was interesting just to mentally have that concept of like passing in mind when I was reading all of this about giants and, you know, Madame Maxine and her choices to pretend that she's not a giant. Yeah, I like that the book tries to contextualize everybody. Again, I think in every video I've mentioned that the book contextualizes somebody, and it's true, and I think it really is like one of the strengths here, that it just paints a three-dimensional picture of everybody, of their decisions, of their choices. Yeah, and it tries not to judge them too harshly. It just like lets them be. Yet another scene that is fantastic and so sweet. It takes place right before the third task. Every champion's family is invited to like spend a little bit of time. I think they're like eating lunch or something. They're snacking, they're together. And that's right before the third task. And so for Harry, he's kind of nervous because, I mean, obviously the Dursleys are not going to come for him. His parents have passed. Sirius is in hiding, so he can't come. So he's feeling a little bit nervous and maybe a little bit embarrassed and ashamed that he's potentially going to be alone. But he walks into the room where all the other families are, and who's there for him but the Weasleys? It's Molly and Bill Weasley. it's like the sweetest thing because it's, you know, we've gotten the hints implicitly that that the Weasleys are kind of Harry's adopted family in a way, and that they treat him like a son or like a brother. And so this is like a more explicit way of saying that to the Weasleys, Harry's family. Like, there may not be blood relation, but they love him just as much as if he were really part of their bloodline. So yeah, it's just like this really sweet moment, and Harry's just so happy when someone's there for him. Something else I really loved about the book that isn't a scene per se, it just permeates the whole book, is how fun it is. You have the Quidditch World Cup, you have the Triwizard Tournament and the 3 tasks in the Triwizard Tournament. Then at the end you have the graveyard scene between Harry and Voldemort and all the Death Eaters. You have the Yule Ball taking place like in the midst of the Triwizard Tournament. It's just fast-paced and really fun, and it feels like the perfect setting for, you know, a kid Harry's age. Like, I feel like that would be like so cool if you were 14 to have like all these fun global events happening around you. It's like exciting, it's active, the plot itself is pretty fast-paced. There were very few, if any, sluggish moments. Yeah, you got to see them, all the students, in a more like social aspects. Like, we always get them in classes doing homework and all of that, but yeah, this one was just much more fun. Like, the schoolwork itself took a back burner, took a backseat to the real protagonist, which was the action of the book. So yeah, it's a nice little break, I guess, from the fun, whimsy stuff of the first 3 books, and what we know will be the darker aspects of the later books in the series. I think this is like the perfect way to say goodbye to purely innocent childhood. 'Cause yeah, after book 4, it's pretty emotionally heavy from now on. And there are like fun aspects to the other books too, but yeah, this is definitely like the end of childhood innocence. One last thing that I liked that I want to mention is, I mean, kind of just the parting of the ways chapter, but mainly the confrontation between Cornelius Fudge and Dumbledore, which happens in the hospital wing. I think we all just like a nasty, corrupt politician, self-centered politician being put in their place. Yeah, and Dumbledore did just that. He pointed out how Cornelius Fudge is just focused on gaining power and maintaining his power, even if that means that he's just gonna have to pretend like nothing wrong or nothing bad is happening, or that there's an imminent war about to befall the wizarding worlds. Like, it's better, I guess, to lie than to appear like a weak leader who's overseeing a time of like great discord. It's like the most cowardly thing that a leader could do. And so I just love that entire interaction between Fudge and Dumbledore, and everything that Dumbledore says is just, you know, so wise, so to the point. So I brought down my copy just so I can read a little bit from page 708. So Dumbledore is trying to warn Fudge that if he doesn't stop with the prejudice against certain groups of people, those groups of people who have felt alienated and otherized and shunned from the legal system, from protections from the government, those people or those creatures are going to go with Voldemort. Like, if Fudge doesn't get it together and, you know, send a reaching hand to them, they're going to be against him. Fudge dismisses this, says that he's crazy, the giants are just violent, that's never going to happen. And then Dumbledore points out that your Dementor has just destroyed the last remaining member of a pure blood family as old as any. And see what that man chose to make of his life. I tell you now, take the steps I have suggested, and you will be remembered, in office or out, as one of the bravest and greatest ministers of magic we have ever known. Fail to act, and history will remember you as the man who stepped aside and allowed Voldemort a second chance to destroy the worlds we have tried to rebuild. Fudge also just dismisses it by saying insane, mad. So yeah, I like Dumbledore's positing of the fact that killing Barty Crouch Jr., again, a pureblood, I mean, the fact that he was so evil, he was a Death Eater, he was an elitist in terms of like pureblood ideology and stuff. I mean, that should show somebody that the idea that like only wizards should be trusted and all other creatures are bad and dangerous, like that should dismantle that concept. Just an example of that stereotype being broken should have been enough. But still, Fudge, despite killing a pureblood who was evil, still doesn't get the idea that like if someone's half-blood or isn't a wizard, they can be innocent or they can be good. Like, yeah, those contradictions, if you will, can exist, and yeah, not everybody just abides by, again, the prejudice. But he doesn't get it. He doesn't care. He just wants power, and I like how calm Dumbledore is in his saying all of this. I like how collected he is. I like his wisdom in this. It's very level-headed. Yeah, and it just shows us a little bit more of Dumbledore's strength as a human being, which is almost similar to Hermione's in a way. Like I mentioned, she was very mature in handling negativity. She didn't lash out. And Dumbledore similarly is like very level-headed. That is his power. He doesn't need to scream. He doesn't need to yell. He doesn't need to make ad hominem attacks on people. He just says the truth in a calm way without trying to diminish the other person. And if they want to believe him and do the right thing, good. But if they don't, also their choice. He's gonna act differently, and in this case, they will just part ways. He will not be, I guess, so closely affiliated with Fudge moving forward. We see the effects of that in book 5, but yeah, Dumbledore just made it very clear. Yeah, and I just loved the tension in that scene. It was great. And yeah, again, it's just nice to have a fictional moment where a politician is put in their place for once. Just a few points to address for the nitpicky portion of this. In a previous video for specifically for Sorcerer's Stone, I think I had mentions that like why couldn't Quirrell just use like an unforgivable curse on Hagrid instead of this like contrived plot of getting Hagrid drunk to and getting him like the dragon egg to figure out like how to get the Sorcerer's Stone. Anyway, so I remembered in reading this book that unforgivable curses are in fact illegal. So that was not really an option. Although, like, I don't know, it's never really stopped anybody from doing anything illegal, you know, the fact that it's illegal. And I don't know how that works. Like, once you do the curse, like, do the R's come and get you right away? Like, does a Dementor show up? Like, once you use it, like, it's illegal, but, like, when do the consequences for that illegality happen? And then another one that I would like to address is in the Prisoner of Azkaban review, I complained about how Lupin's Defense Against the Dark Arts classes kind of seemed like a Care of Magical Creatures classes. An opinion I still stand by, but book 4 gives an explanation to that, and it's that I guess up until 3rd year, students in Defense Against the Dark Arts learn how to defend themselves against dark creatures, and I guess starting in year 4, that's when they do more spell work and defensive spell work. So that's the explanation given. Still think it's not good enough. Yeah, still think that could easily be incorporated into a Care of Magical Creatures class. But again, it's my problem. I guess it's not really anybody else's problem. One thing I wish there was more of in Goblet of Fire is Cedric Diggory. I feel like for the focus on his death at the end to have mattered more to me as a reader, there needed to be like more scenes with Cedric from the beginning of Goblet of Fire, or even more scenes with Cedric scattered throughout like books 1 to 3. I don't know, like maybe he could have like been in more scenes or been in one of Harry's classes before this. He just sort of comes out of nowhere in the beginning of book 4, and then he dies at the end. And you know, I'm like a normal human being. Yes, it's a very sad thing that this innocent person was killed, but also like, I don't know, it's not the same as like, I don't know, killing Hagrid or something, whom we know a lot about and who's, you know, like a central figure to the story. Cedric is like a periphery detail. Like, he's just on the outskirts of the book, of the plot, of the story, of the friend groups. So yeah, I think it would have made for a stronger climax in the book if, yeah, he was just drawn out more throughout the series so far. Something else that, like, I don't have like a huge problem with it. I'm sort of okay accepting that it's just part of the Harry Potter lore, that it's just something that exists within this wizarding world, and the parallel to reality and like our real worlds just can only go so far, and that parallel is between the house elves and slaves. Like, I think the problem for me with the parallel, again, I don't know how much I'm supposed to like push the parallel metaphor, but where I have an issue with it is the idea that like house elves are all brainwashed, and so they all don't know that freedom is actually the good thing for them. They're just like uneducated, and if they knew the information, then they would want to be free. Very much not in line with like slaves in the real world, who were not brainwashed. It almost reminded me of, like, hate to mention him, but that Kanye West, that rant that he went on, I think it was on TMZ, where he said like something like, he alluded to the fact that like slaves were brainwashed. Like, how could slavery have gone on for so many hundreds of years? Like, it's almost like they wanted to be slaves, and it's like, no. No. But so like, yeah, the parallel between the house elves and the slaves within this idea that like house elves love being servile and are happy to like serve their superiors, yeah, just doesn't totally, not even totally, it doesn't at all fit with like historical slaves. But again, like, maybe that's just a thing, you know, like the metaphor only went up to the fact that house elves and slaves are enslaved. They serve other people, and maybe that's where it's supposed to stop, and like then the magic takes over, and then like it exists in its own like lore and logic for Harry Potter. But yeah, I mean, the parallel is there. Hermione like focuses on it. She uses the word slave, so I can't help but like see where the problem lies. But yeah, I'm willing to sort of accept that maybe that this is just where, you know, the metaphor went up to a certain point, and then like creativity filled in the rest. The last thing that I'm going to mention for this more negative, nitpicky section, again, it's pretty short because this was a great book, but okay, so I don't love the graveyard scene. I think that Voldemort was supposed to do something more evil. like, I don't know, his powers, him rising again to, you know, reclaim his Death Eaters, his power, his glory, his reign. Like, he's been built up to this point as being like a very, very powerful wizard, that could rival Dumbledore, like in the opposite side of the spectrum. Obviously, Voldemort is like a dark arts kind of wizard, but still, he's incredibly, incredibly powerful, and he has all these intricate skills, and he studied the dark arts, yes, but magic in a way that like makes him, yeah, a really, really powerful dude. And then like the climax in the graveyard scene is priori incantatum. I don't know, it was just like kind of anticlimactic for me, like wands connecting and like the spirit ghost things coming out and like helping Harry, and then he escapes back to Hogwarts. It's like, no. I mean, yes, but like like Voldemort just seems like he could be defeated by like a 14-year-old like way too easily, for being such a strong wizard. Like, I wanted to see more magic or less discussion again in these climactic scenes, less discussion and more action, like more spell work, more like evidence to this greatness, this like legend, in the wizarding world. Legend for, you know, terrible reasons, but still, like, I don't know, I don't want to see discussions. I want to see cool spell work. Does improve in book 5, I will say. That's where you can really see like the how what magic can do, like how strong wizards use and manipulate spells and stuff to like make them super strong. Yeah. So yeah, that's, I think those are my negatives. Like, I really don't have that much negative to say. I really like Goblet of Fire. Super fun, fast paced. Yeah, again, not like much of a dull moment. Really funny. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. And that's it for the review. Of course, I heard no renovations happening during this video, which is a little bit annoying, but I'm not gonna go down that road of ranting again. But hopefully, book 5, Order of the Phoenix review, I will go back to my original setup, because I think it's, you know, a little bit cozier, kind of nice. Yeah, but, you know, Hermione, Yule Ball Hermione joined us today. She had my back. And yeah, so again, let me know what you think. Give me your opinions on this book. Is this your favorite in the series? Is this your least favorite? Why? Why not? Just, I would love to hear what all of you guys have to say. Thanks again for watching. Like and subscribe if you so wish to do. And yeah, I look forward to Order of the Phoenix. Hopefully I'm in a better mood in my old setup. But yeah, always a pleasure to chat about Harry Potter, because even though I am in a bad mood, it does kind of make me happy, regardless. So yeah, thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye.